Welcome back to NaNoWriMo at PGCMLS. I'm Drea, a librarian at the Accokeep branch, and in this video, we will be tackling both sessions 2 and 3 of the Preptober workbook. Let's start with session 2. Session 2. Create complex and believable characters. What makes a good character? That is a question that a lot of us writers ask ourselves. Well, the best way to learn is to learn what not to do. To avoid making an unrelatable and annoying character, it's best to keep these thoughts in mind while creating them for your novel. Refrain from making them perfect. No one is good at everything, so give them a couple flaws. Just like us, our mistakes make us human. Also, try to add balance to your characters. Is your antagonist all bad? Is your protagonist a completely goody-goody? Even them out with unexpected qualities differing from their intended roles. Also, make them vulnerable. Show your character struggling with a task or concept. It'll make readers cheer for them, whether they are a good or bad guy. Everybody struggles with something. But when we overcome them, that's the feel-good moments that we're all looking for in fiction and in our everyday life. So I thought it'd be a good idea to show you guys stories with complex characters. You may know some of them. Our first character is Sherlock Holmes, created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, some of you may know him from the books, while others may know them from the popular TV show Sherlock. Meet Joseph Bell. Conan Doyle based the character on a Scottish surgeon at the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh named Joseph Bell. As a young man, Doyle clerked for Bell, and the two maintained a correspondence throughout the remainder of Bell's life. Holmes' ability to draw conclusions from the observation of what most would consider to be minutiae, if they were noticed at all, was one practiced and often demonstrated by Bell. From observing Joseph Bell, Conan Doyle was able to create Sherlock, someone who is known for noticing the minutiae and putting it all together. Our next complex character is Severus Snape from the very popular book series Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling based everyone's favorite Slytherin on one of her former teachers, John Nettleship, who was surprised to learn of his role in the literary juggernaut. Nettleship, who passed away in 2011, was quoted as saying he was horrified when he heard that he inspired saying, "I knew I was a strict teacher, but I didn't think I was that bad." He admitted he was a short-tempered chemistry teacher with long hair and a gloomy, malodorous laboratory, and thus could see the connection. Considering Snape is arguably one of the most complex and interesting characters of all time, it's not a bad legacy. He's the type of character that when you love him, you love him, and if you hate him, you hate him. But you still kind of sort of love him anyway. Now it's time for our writing exercise. This exercise is called Take the Art Mimics Life approach. Step 1. Create a character using real people as templates. Use close friends or family members to help you create interesting characters with idiosyncratic personalities and traits. Step 2. For this exercise, spend some time thinking about the qualities that make the people in your life unique and interesting. Ask yourself questions about them. What stands out most about them? Is it their hair, freckles, different color eyes, maybe a crooked smile? Something about them pops out to you. What is something you hear them say often? Do they stutter? Do they sigh a lot? Maybe they mumble. What are they doing or not doing most of the time? Are they always on their phone? Are they always out with friends? Maybe they just can't get their head out of a book. And step 3. Now take these traits and think about how you might incorporate them into your novel. Is their cheerful attitude awe-inspiring to other characters in your novel? Or maybe it's insensitive and annoying in times of crisis. Remember, character traits can determine the tone of the novel and the direction that the story goes in. If you're still having trouble with character creation, here are some more resources. Let's move on to Session 3. Construct a detailed plot or outline. Plots are defined as the main events of a play, novel, movie, or similar work devised and presented by the writer as an interrelated sequence. In other words, notating the points between A, B, all the way to Z. A good way to understand plots is to see good examples of them. Here they are. Our first example of a plot is the 3-act structure. The 3-act structure is a model used in narrative fiction that divides a story into 3 parts or acts, often called the setup, the confrontation, and the resolution. A perfect example of the 3-act structure would be The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. In Act 1, the setup, the exposition tells us who Katniss is, what her world is like, and who the main players are in her world. In Act 2, the confrontation, the stakes become serious. Katniss enters the 74th Hunger Games. She nearly dies of thirst until she understands the message her mentor is sending. Finally, in Act 3, the resolution, Katniss and Peeta make it as the last 2 tributes by killing Cato. The game makers announce that the rules have changed again, and only one of them can win. Katniss defies them and plans to commit suicide with Peeta. The game makers stop them and crown them both victors. So that was the beginning, the middle, and the end with Acts 1, 2, and 3. Our next example of a plot structure is the hero's journey. The hero's journey is a story structure that involves a hero who goes on an adventure, is victorious in a decisive crisis, and comes home changed or transformed. In our diagram here, there are 4 parts to the hero's journey. Act 1, separation. Act 2, a descent. Act 2, Part B, the initiation. And then finally, Act 3, the return. In the hero's journey, there are 12 points: the ordinary world, the call to adventure, the refusal to the call, meeting the mentor, crossing first threshold, test, allies, and enemies, the approach, ordeal, the reward, the road back, a resurrection period, and the return with elixir. The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien is a great example of the hero's journey. In the ordinary world, Frodo, his best friend Sam, and his 2 cousins Merry and Pippin live merrily in a small village of Shire. Frodo reserves a call to adventure when Gandalf urges Frodo to set out on a quest to destroy the ring. In the refusal of the call, Frodo is initially reluctant to leave his comfortable life in Shire, but when he is almost killed by the ring wraiths, Sauron's minions, he realizes his life will always be at risk as long as the ring exists. In the meeting with the mentor, Frodo meets the Fellowship, a group of trusted allies of Gandalf that have pledged to help Frodo in his quest to destroy the ring. Then there's crossing the first threshold. Frodo begins his quest with the aid of the Fellowship on his long journey to the volcano called Mount Doom. In Test, Allies, and Enemies, Frodo encounters many obstacles, allies, and enemies along the way. He journeys over the mountain pass, nearly escapes the wrath of Balrog, he becomes allies with the elves, he is almost captured by the forces of Sauron, he's attacked by Gollum, and is nearly eaten by a carnivorous spider. In Approach to the Inmost Cave, Frodo departs from the Fellowship alone with Sam to continue his long journey to the fires of Mount Doom with Gollum as a guide, leaving the Fellowship to deal with Sauron's minions. Here comes the supreme ordeal. Whether or not Frodo will achieve his goal of reaching Mount Doom to destroy the ring, and whether or not the cumulative prowess of the Fellowship and its allies will defeat the forces of Sauron. And here's the supreme ordeal. Whether or not Frodo will achieve his goal of reaching Mount Doom to destroy the ring, in whether or not the cumulative prowess of the Fellowship and its allies will defeat the forces of Sauron. In the reward, or seizing the sword, the destruction of the ring in Mount Doom and the victory of the cumulative prowess of the Fellowship and its allies over the forces of Sauron. On the road back, Frodo falls unconscious to the floor after extreme mental exhaustion of finally getting rid of the ring. Sam and Frodo are rescued by Gandalf and his eagles. In the resurrection, several weeks later, Frodo awakens from his unconscious, exhausted state just in time to witness Aragorn's marriage to his longtime love, Arwen, and his ascension to the throne of the realm. Simultaneously, all the members of the Fellowship are knighted by Aragorn, with exception of Gandalf. Finally, in the Return with the Elixir, Frodo returns to the Shire with more powerful relationships. Eventually, Frodo journeys to the Undying Lands to live peacefully for the rest of eternity. As you can see, in The Lord of the Rings, they follow each point from the ordinary world to the extraordinary world and back. Our last example of a plot structure is a 7-point story structure. The 7-point story structure is much like the hero's journey, but focuses more on the highs and lows of a narrative arc. The 7-point story structure consists of the hook, plot point 1, pinch point 1, midpoint, pinch point 2, plot point 2, and the resolution. By the way, each pinch point adds a wrench or surprise twist to the story. The Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling is a great example of a novel that follows a 7-point story structure. We begin at plot point 1, where Hagrid arrives to tell Harry that he's a wizard. With Hagrid, Harry escapes the Dursleys and heads off to Diagon Alley to prepare for his new life as a wizard in training. In pinch point 1, a troll is found in Hogwarts on Halloween. Harry and Ron go to find Hermione, who is unaware of the troll. They end up luring it into and locking the troll in the girls' bathroom without realizing that's exactly where Hermione is. Together, they take down the troll. In the midpoint, Harry, Ron, and Hermione learn about the Philosopher's Stone and realize it's being kept guard in Hogwarts. They also learn that Voldemort is after the stone and decide they must find it before he does. In pinch point 2, the trio journey through the magical protections set in place to protect the stone. Harry loses Ron and Hermione on the way, leaving him to confront Voldemort on his own. In plot point 2, at the height of the story's primary conflict, Harry looks in the mirror of Erised. Because his intentions for finding the stone are pure, the stone appears in his pocket, and he learns that if Voldemort touches Harry, it will harm the Dark Wizard and not himself. Finally, in the resolution, armed with the discoveries of the Mirror of Erised given to Harry, he defeats Voldemort. Now, there are a lot of twists and turns within the Harry Potter series that is not captured in this diagram, but it does capture the rhythm of the plot structure, where there's a main point, there's a twist, there's a second point, and another twist, and then there's a resolution. This goes throughout the entire series until it is completely finished. Now that we've learned about different plot structures and seen examples of them used in popular fiction, it's time for us to choose our own plot for our own novels. I call this writing exercise Pick a Plot. We'll simply pick a plot out of the 3 that we have gone over and use them for our novel. It's best to use a plot that fits well with the story idea that you have in mind. If none of these plot structures fit your story, here are some resources with different plot structures that may work for you. Our next session is session 4. Build a strong world for your characters. Want to skip ahead? Download the free Preptober workbook at nanaremo.org/nano-prep-101 for more writing exercises. For more writing tips and resources, visit nanaremo.org. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next session.